Okay, so now we're starting into chapter 11, which says this. 11-1 says the square root property and completing the square. There's actually more formulas that go into this chapter, but I'll explain those later. The ones that are going to be important are going to be completing the square and the square root property. The square root property says this. U squared is equal to D, and I know that these are just random variables for you, but stick with it and I'll show you some examples. If U squared is equal to D, I want to solve this thing for U, so I'm going to take the square root of each side. When I take the square root of each side, this eliminates this. So I'm just left with U. Here's the thing. When you take the square root, when you're doing an equation, it's plus or minus. This needs to be there, plus or minus. So U is plus or minus the square root of D. How did I get the square root of D? Because I square root both sides. Well, I can break it up into positive square root of D or negative square root of D. That's plus or minus the square root of D. That is the square root property. Now you're saying, okay, those are nice variables. Show me how it works. Okay, let's do it. Okay, the square root property says I gotta set things a little bit differently. So in other words, I just can't have this. What I have to do is I actually have to solve this thing a little bit, and to do this, I'm gonna set this thing equal to 0. I'm gonna subtract 18, because I'm solving for x, or whatever that variable is. So I got 3x squared is equal to negative 18. Divide by 3. X squared is equal to negative 6. How do I get rid of that square root? The square, I take the square root. So I got x is equal to plus or minus, always put in the plus or minus, the square root of negative 6. Now we've already talked about how to get rid of that negative. You can't have negative in this square root. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 6 times the square root of negative 1. Remember, I can split that up. What is the square root of negative 1? This is I. So x is equal to plus or minus I, because this is I, square root of 6. And you can leave it just like that. Okay? Again, solving for x, not 4x, 4x. So add 7. So I get 2x squared is equal to 7. Divide by 2. X squared is equal to 7 over 2. Take the square root of each side. So x is equal to, do not forget the plus or minus, the square root of 7 over 2. I don't like that because I can't simplify it. So I have to put this square root over the top and the bottom. If you can't simplify what's underneath this radical sign, put the square root sign over the top and bottom. Rationalize. Square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Multiply across the top, I get the square root of 14. Across the bottom, I get the square root of 4. Well, what's the square root of 4? 2. And remember, it's plus and minus. Notice how we did not lose any of those skills from the previous chapter. Next. Well, this looks like an awful lot like this one, but we'll solve it. Minus 25 minus 25. 9x squared is equal to negative 25. Divide by 9. X squared is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 25 over 9. Which is also to say that this is plus or minus the square root of 25 over 9 times the square root of negative 1. Anytime that you have a negative in there, make it a negative 1. Well, this, I can put the square root over the top and the bottom. Well, the square root of 25, which is just 5, the square root of 9, which is 3, and the square root of negative 1, which is I. X is equal to plus or minus 5 over 3I. What if you have something that looks like this? Well, now, if you have something that's squared, you got to get rid of it. How do I get rid of it? Well, I multiply this by, or I do the square root on each side. Well, that takes care of the squared, so I'm left with x minus 1 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5. I cannot simplify the square root of 5. So just add 1 because I'm solving for x. Add 1. X is equal to, put this 1 out in front. Always put that constant out in front. Plus or minus square root of 5. There's two answers there. 1 plus the square root of 5. 1 minus the square root of 5. That's what plus and minus does. It gives you two answers, two possible solutions, but I'm just going to leave it just like this. This is a good answer. Okay? Next. Completing the square. Completing the square says, okay, I've given you this, and I got to factor it. Okay? I got to factor this. So, first of all, it's got to have a leading coefficient of 1. If it's not 1, divide through, make it 1. Okay, leading coefficient of 1. Now, b is attached to the x. This is the key to completing the square. Because what you do is you divide b by 2 and you square it. Say that again, divide b by 2 and you square it. This does not cancel each other out, by the way. B divided by 2 is different than saying b squared or 2 squared, okay? Now look at what I did here. I put it back in here to say, great, once you take b over 2 to the second power, now you can rewrite it. That looks like this. Here's the key. Whatever this is in here, whatever that is, that's your solution in here. Whatever this is, and I'll show you the examples, but whatever this is, that's the solution when you go to factoring. And it's a factoring pattern, so there's not much work to be done. The work is in the front half, not in the back half of the problem. So if I look at this, what is b? Well, b is 8. First thing is that x squared is 1, so that's good. b is 8. So b over 2. Well, b divided by 2, which is 8 over 2, which is 4. And I square it, which is 16. Remember, I squared, so I got this x squared plus 8x plus, this term was 4 squared, right? 4 squared, because remember, I'm looking at this, b over 2 squared, okay? That's what I was looking for. Well, this is good, because I already told it that that's 16, right? But I don't have to work too much about factoring this. Because remember, your answer is in that parenthesis. Whatever that number is, that's your answer. X plus 4 squared, and I'm done. You don't have to work at this. Your answer is right here. It's right here. It's the b over 2. That's your answer here. b over 2. That's your answer. Let's try this. What is my b? Follow signs. My b is negative 7. So b over 2 is negative 7 over 2. b over 2 squared is negative 7 over 2 squared, or this is 49 fourths. Well, let's put it in here. X squared, the leading coefficient is 1, so I'm good, minus 7x. Remember, I'm doing this plus negative 7 over 2 squared. Well, I did all the work. This is plus 49 over 4, but now I have to factor that. Your answer's in here. Minus 7 over 2, just write it in. Oh boy, I know what that is. So that is x minus 7 over 2 squared. Listen, that's ugly. But this answer is right here. No work to be done in the first half. Okay? Ooh, fraction. B is 3/5. B over 2. Well, it's almost like you're multiplying by a half. So this is 3/5 times 1 over 2. Because if you're dividing by 2, it's like you're multiplying the top and bottom by a half, just so you know. So this is 3 over 10. Well, now I got to square it. So this is 9 over 100. Okay, well, let's go back to the drawing board. X squared plus 3 over 5x plus, I'm going to put this 3 over 10 squared. Factor, because this is 9 over 100. Factor x, there's your answer, 3 over 10 squared. Okay? Moving on. Solving equations by completing the square. Well, now this isn't as easy because you got to do a couple more steps. It's just not giving you a couple things and saying, well, find B and then do the rest of the work. So let's do this. The first thing that I have to do is make sure that I've got a 1 as the leading coefficient. I do. That's good. That's step 1. Step 2 is I got to get this thing to the other side. Remember, because in all my examples, I have x squared and x on one side. So I'm going to subtract 4. X squared minus 6x is equal to negative 4. That is important to note. Because again, on one side, you got to have just x squared and x. That's what you wanted. That's what the previous examples were. So b is negative 6. b over 2 is negative 6 over 2, or negative 3. b over 2 squared is negative 3 squared, or 9. Now watch what I do here. Watch what I do here. So I have this, x squared minus 6x plus, this is negative 3 squared. Whatever I do to one side, I got to do to the other. Say it again. Whatever I do to one for balance in algebra, you got to do to the other. So I'm going to add negative 3 squared. Well, this is x squared minus 6x plus 9 is equal to negative 4 plus 9. Well, this is x, look what's in here. This is your answer. Minus 3 squared is equal to 5. Okay, negative 4 plus 9 is 5. We did these problems. How do you get rid of the square? Well, you take the square root of both sides. So you got x minus 3, because this square root takes care of the square, is equal to plus or minus, don't forget the plus or minus, the square root of 5. I don't like this because I'm solving for x. So I add 3. I get x is equal to, remember, put the constant to lead it, 3 plus or minus square root of 5. It's a heck of a problem. But that's where we're going to, that's what we're doing. Next. Okay, we've got to do a couple things here. One, because the leading coefficient is 9, I don't like that. So divide everything through by 9. So I have this, x squared minus, I'm going to reduce this. This is 2/3 x. This is minus 4/9. But remember what I got to do. I got to move it to the other side. So I got x squared minus 2/3 x. Add 4/9 is equal to 4/9. I added 4/9 to each side. Plus 4/9. Plus 4/9. That's what I did. Okay? What's my b? My b is negative 2/3. b over 2. Remember, it's like multiplying by a half. Multiplying by a half. So this is negative 2 over 6. I can reduce that to negative 1/3. So b over 2 squared is negative 1/3 squared, or 1/9. It's a whole lot of work, but let's put things together. Okay, so I'm over here. This is x squared minus 2/3 x. And remember what I did is I got this plus 1/9, and I got this plus 1/9. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And this is my b over 2. So now, factor, you already got it, it's in here. b over 2 squared, it's right there. Minus 1/3 squared is equal to 5/9. Take the square root of both sides. X minus 1/3 is equal to plus or minus 5, the square root of 5/9. But this is the square root of 5 over the square root of 9. The square root of 9, which is 3. So this is the square root of 5 over 3. X minus 1/3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5 over 3. Move this to the other side, add a third. I know you can't see that. I'm going to put it out front. X is equal to 1/3 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 3. That is a good answer. That's a whole lot of work. Completing the square. Completing the square. Okay, let's take a look at this bad boy, because now what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, hey, listen, I've got to divide everything through by 2. So I got x squared minus 1/2 x plus 3 is equal to 0. Subtract 3. X squared minus 1/2 x is equal to 3. Negative 3, sorry. B is equal to negative 1/2. B over 2, which is like multiplying by 1/2, which is negative 1/4. B over 2 squared is negative 1/4 squared, which is 1 over 16. Add that to both sides. X squared minus 1/2 x plus 1/16 is equal to negative 3 plus 1/16. Factor this side. So this is x. Remember, it's in here. Your solution is in that parenthesis. Minus 1/4 is equal to, this is negative 40. Well, what do I got here? Negative 48 over 16 plus 1 over 16, which is equal to negative 47 over 16. I'm going to put it up here. X minus 1/4 squared is equal to negative 47 over 16. I'm going to take the square root of each side. X minus 1/4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 47 over the square root of 16. How do I get that negative out? Well, this is like saying the negative, so I do the square root of 47 times the square root of negative 1. So I have x minus 1/4 is equal to plus or minus I, radical 47, over 4. Move the 1/4 to the other side, add a 4. X is equal to 1/4 plus or minus I, radical 47, over 4. Woo-wee! It's a lot for a problem. That's a lot. Here are some formulas that I'm just going to talk through. I don't know why they put these formulas here, but I'm just going to talk through them. Compound interest. Hopefully, maybe everybody's had savings accounts, which don't give you much interest, or any sort of, IRA or CD or anything like that. But here's the formula. A is equal to P, which is the initial investment, parentheses 1 plus R, that 1 is constant. R is the rate, but you always have to change it. So if you have 4%, change the percent to a decimal, which is 0.04. So if I were to put it in here, it would be 1 plus 0.04 or 1.04. T is the number of years, that's the investment. Usually it's a 3-year CD or a 5-year or a 1-year. So T is that time, and A, obviously, is after you do the whole calculation. That's how much money you got at the end of the time. Okay? Pythagorean theorem. Right triangle. Why is it a right triangle? Because it's got a right angle. Opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. It's C. A and B are just the legs. It's the legs of these triangle, and then this slanted side across from the little box is the hypotenuse. Here's the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Why did they put it in this section? Don't know. Next, the distance formula. That's if I have a graph. If I have a graph for you, and I said, hey, by the way, I got 2 points here, 1 point here, 1 point here, and I want to know the distance in between them. I use this distance formula because both of these points, x1 comma y1 and x2 comma y2, those are 2 points that I can put into the distance formula to find out what this distance is. Also the midpoint, which is here, x sub 1, that's how you say it, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2. I can find the middle of this thing. Which, by the way, that's pretty darn close for me to pick that out. But this is the distance formula, the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. And there's your midpoint formula. Why did they put that in here? I don't know. The quadratic formula. Here's the quadratic formula. You got A's, B's, and C's. This is when you can't factor, and you got to factor it by doing something other than guess and check or grouping or anything like that. So here it is. Negative B plus or minus, I will give you this formula, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Commit this thing to memory. I'm going to do an example, and then we're going to call it a day in this, because there's a lot of stuff in here. Got it? Everybody got that? Got that? Got that? All you have to know is what A, B's, and C's are. What are your A, B's, and C's? A is 8. B is 2. C is -1. Please follow the signs that are immediately to the left of each one of those coefficients or the constant. Now I'm going to put it into the formula. X is equal to negative B, -2, plus or minus the square root of B squared. So that's 2 squared minus 4 times A, which is 8, times C, which is -1, all over 2 times A. Well, now it's just a matter of working some stuff out. Order of operations, solving -2 plus or minus 2 squared, which is 4, -4 times 8, which is -32, -32 times -1, which is plus 32, all over 16. -2 plus or minus the square root of 36, all over 16. Everybody knows that the square root of 36, which is 6. Now here's how these answers go. Here's how the answers go. -2 plus 6 over 16 and -2 minus 6 over 16. Well, this is 4 over 16, which is 1/4. That's one of the answers. This is -8 over 16, which is -1/2. Do more examples on this next week. And so, again, a lot of information today, but just stick with it. We're nearing the end, so stick with us.